It is Thursday, September 12th, and it's getting pretty late with Jake Landau, although we're actually recording in the morning. This weekend, the Ontario Liberals are having their annual general meeting, where they'll elect a new executive, but also they will decide whether or not Bonnie Crombie gets to remain leader of their party. I attended the New Leaf Liberals pre-AGM pub night last night, where I talked to two people running for the executive slate. One of them is a new person, but one of them you already know. He's been on the show previously. And they talk to me about what they feel about Bonnie Crombie and also why they're running for the Ontario Liberal Executive and what they plan to do in the Liberal Party. After that, we'll get back to our normal headline topics of the week, an abbreviated one, just 2 instead of 3 this time, so sit back, relax, enjoy some live interviews from last night on September 11th, and enjoy the show. We're here live on the scene at the New Leaf Liberals pre-annual general meeting pub night. Here on the scene doing some live interviews with a few different people. And our first one here, we've had him on the show before. His name is Noah Parker. And we have him back. This time he's running for regional vice president in East York,
Etobicoke and downtown.
And downtown.
That's it.
And it's a pleasure to have him back on. Noah, how you doing?
I'm well, Jake. Thank you so much. A long-time listener, now a second-time caller.
No, it's always fun to have a repeat guest on the program. And I was just wondering, what's it feel like now that you've got the New Leaf Liberals more further along in your path? Like that you've got the AGM tomorrow, people are actually going to be voting on the leadership review. I mean, the main question we all have on the top of our minds is, do you think that Bonnie is going to be staying, or do you think you'll be able to get her to go?
Well, you know what? I like to think that there's an appetite for change, and so, I'm putting my money on a leadership race. It's been a terrific couple of months organizing. It's been the most exciting time I've had as an Ontario Liberal in some time. And it is really, in a nutshell, the most grassroots you can get, what we've been working on here at the New Leaf Liberals. And, looking around, we've got a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different parts of our party who are super, super energized for the first time in what feels like a decade. Yeah, you've got a reasonably filled room here. Is this about what you were expecting for a crowd tonight? I think so. I know a lot of folks are coming from out of town, and a Thursday night is tough for folks who are coming to the conference on Friday. But generally, I would say this is a pretty good crowd. But we've had bigger, we've had smaller. I think we had a crowd of 10 in Burlington and a crowd of almost 50 in Toronto a couple of months ago. And so it's been a wide variety, but in the sizes of crowd, but more importantly in the perspectives that people have as they bring and they come and join our events. No, yeah. I mean, obviously, you're right in that the event doesn't start until tomorrow afternoon, so people aren't necessarily in from out of town yet. But I also presume the last Toronto event was local as well. So, you've got some people here, but... and I will note, selfishly, I'm running in this region
you
for
are
regional
as well,
vice president.
so this does help you in particular.
It does indeed, and a lot of the folks, sitting around the room, standing around the room and chatting, are my electors, and so I look forward to, politicking tonight. And what led you to the path of... contesting a regional vice president position on the Ontario Liberal Executive? Because I don't think that was on the radar the last time we chatted. No, it wasn't. I think it's always been, a potential in my mind. I've given a lot to our party in a variety of capacities, and if I can be helpful in this capacity, of course, I'm happy to. That'll be up for my electors to decide. But I really found, especially as of recent, and especially with everything going on in the lead up to the AGM, that more than ever I felt like there was an in crowd and an out crowd within our party. And that's the perspective that I really want to change. And so jumping out of the out crowd, hoping to broaden, the tent of our party, I decided to put my name into the hat for regional VP. I love where I live. I love the city of Toronto. I remember it being some of the safest red seats in the province when I had just arrived in this city from Burlington, and it is no longer the case. And so I'm going to work tirelessly, if elected, to change that, to flip some seats red.
Now, I know a lot of other candidates as well in the past and currently, they do talk about similar things, though. They want to make the things that don't work. They want to get the riding associations and everything up and running. They want to create a more inclusive atmosphere. But there doesn't ever seem to be that much of a long-term change. So for the hard question here, like, how do we know you're different?
That's a great question, Jake. Well, I would say two things. Number one, look at my background. Like, I like to think that I've been part of the outcrowd of Ontario Liberal politics, in the sense that I've been in the trenches, knocking on doors. I've been working in constituency offices. My first job out of school was in the most junior role you can get in Queen's Park. I was an intern and then an executive assistant and policy advisor to the EA at Finance. And then I've also gone through the private sector. I've been an entrepreneur. I've started and sold a business. And so I like to think, while a lot of the folks who love to contest these positions come from political backgrounds and, more often than not are a product of the party, I like to think I've gone out and I've learned my lessons. I've cut my teeth in the private and public sector. And I like to think I'm bringing a pragmatic approach that we haven't had in some time in this role. But ultimately, what I'd say to you is, let's have this exact same conversation a year from now, and if you will be saying I told you so, I'll admit it. But I like to think, and if you speak to the people I work with professionally, I'm a man of my word, and I will implement every single thing I've come up with my platform, not because I think they're easy, but because I think they're hard and because I think they're needed.
Well, I would note, if you do win this election and join the Ontario Liberal Executive, we'll hopefully be having you back on the program more earlier than a year from now. But we'll definitely check in with you.
I will accept any invitation you give me, as long as it's not video recorded, as I've said to you before.
Yeah.
I have a face for radio.
Yeah, I make that joke too, but I feel you. But one question going back on to Bonnie is, how are you appraising her strength right now going into the AGM?
How do I appraise her strength going into the AGM?
Yeah, like how do you think her situation is in whipping up delegates to get to, because you want people to vote yes to have a new leadership contest, and she wants people to vote no and not have a new leadership contest.
Well, you know what, I think, arguing to keep the status quo, considering what our status quo is a tough one to do. And so I don't envy Bonnie and her crew having to argue to folks that the status quo is working, because it's not.
Generally, I find that Liberals like to win.
Well, and anybody likes to win, right? And I've been a loser for too long now. So I would say, the strength coming in, I will give credit to Ms. Crombie and her team of staff and talented volunteers. They've definitely done a lot of the work that we had prescribed they should be doing over the summer, but it was in reaction to our prescription. And I think I don't think the cards are on her side of the table going into this weekend, but I will also say, and I think it's important to note, that I could be very wrong, and I could have my finger on the wrong pulse, and Bonnie could survive this leadership question with flying colors, and you will see me the following morning at her first rally, and you will continue to see my monthly donations, because our party is more important than our personal perspectives on leadership, and I think that's an important thing.
Well, that gets into my follow-up, because it is nice to say that, and Liberals do talk a lot about how after a contest or an internal debate, you want to bring the tent back together. But do you believe that if you win this leadership, that if Bonnie remains as leader, but if you join the executive, do you think that will be a productive working relationship?
100%. I'd rather work with another Liberal than Doug Ford and his Tories. But our ends are all the same. Right?
On another point, though, do you think she'll be prepared to work with you and other New Leaf Liberals?
Her. I would say I hope so, and I'm optimistic. The people she surrounds herself with have made it clear already in their comments to the press that they want to, put the New Leafers against the wall, which I won't abide by. We're all Ontario Liberals.
Well, that is sort of why I do raise the question, because it's nice if she's personally polite about things, but if all the staff around her are saying that they want to keep New Leafers on the out and out after this, if they survive, that doesn't really portend for a good big tent working relationship.
Well, and you know what? I won't let the staffer chatter lead us in that direction. I'll take Bonnie at her word, and she said, no matter the outcome
I'm sure
of this,
she appreciates the benefit of the doubt.
Well, and I will give that to her. And the other thing I will say, and I didn't want to bring it up, but obviously everybody saw what happened down south, just yesterday, and it is a hard reminder to all of us that we all, especially in the red team here, us Liberals, our ends are all the same, right? It's just the means to those ends are different. We all are fighting the same fight.
You can disagree with each other without killing each other.
Well, that is, I'd say, a more jumping to the conclusion way to say it, but essentially...
to put it more bluntly.
But I would also say, there's no hostility, there's no personal animosity here.
Right.
We all want the same thing. We want to beat Doug Ford, and we want to make Ontario a better place for people to live, for people to work and raise a family. And we don't do that by tearing each other down. We do it by building each other up. But we do it by being pragmatic and realistic and optimistic, right? We can't keep doing what isn't working. We need to find a way to change and find a way to win.
Now, one more thing I did want to get your opinion on. Nate Erskine-Smith's recently released information about the AGM, including which executive candidates he thinks people should vote for. And this has raised some further hackles in that some of the people he's endorsed, or Team Nate, whatever the distinction between him and that is, some of the people have rejected his endorsement. Do you think that it's a beneficial endorsement for people to have? Do you think that it's an endorsement to shy away from?
Well,
because I know the New Leaf Liberals have wanted to maintain a bit of distance from Mr. Erskine-Smith.
Well, wanted to and have, right? I haven't heard from Nate in a long time, and I was on that list of endorsements, and I didn't know that there was a list of endorsements, and I'm happy to receive his endorsement. Who wouldn't want to get endorsed by somebody?
But you appreciate it, but you didn't know it was coming.
But the question you need to be asking is, why are people so afraid to be endorsed by Nate Erskine-Smith?
By another Liberal.
Right? And the question we're all asking is, why is there a culture of fear if your toe steps out of line, right? And is that the way that people should be approaching our executive council? Should our executive councillors be so afraid of their perception, the perception of them by the leader's office, that they change their perspective?
Do you think the current executive council has handled this race in a way that's neutral to the membership? Or do you think that they've been tilted a bit by the leader office's pressure?
I won't at all for a second lay weight to any assertion that anybody at the OLP has, inferior intentions or did this, maliciously. I'll be frank. It's been an imperfect process. The memos that came out had deadlines that weren't met. I don't know what's going on behind the big red curtain, and I know running an AGM from my professional experience, can be tough and daunting, but do I think it's a nefarious or malintention? No. But do I think this was a perfect process? Also no.
Correct.
And is it something that I want to work on if elected? 100%.
Because I know that there's supposed to have been limits on who had access to contact info for delegates, let alone things like their personal addresses. But I also recently reported on my own column that there were flyers that were sent out, and they're pro-Bonnie, saying to vote no in a leadership review. But there's no disclaimer who sent them, who paid for them, who worked on them.
Well,
Does that bother you?
The only thing I'll say to that is it's a shame that the first piece of mail I got from the Ontario Liberal Party since the election was one telling me to keep Bonnie and not one asking me for money.
That's a fair point. Yeah. Noah, thank you so much for joining the program. Hopefully we'll talk to a few of your friends here tonight and tomorrow. And yes, best of luck in your contest.
Thanks, Jake. And anybody listening in the riding in which I'm running, I hope I can earn your support.
Yes,
and I hope
that
I
would
see
be
at the AGM.
East York, Etobicoke, or Scarborough. If you're in one of those Toronto ridings.
East York, Etobicoke, and downtown.
And downtown, not Scarborough.
That's
East
right.
York, Etobicoke, and downtown. If you're in one of those Toronto ridings and you're a Liberal delegate at this AGM, then you will potentially be voting for Mr. Noah Parker here.
That's
Noah,
it.
thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Jake.
Noah Parker, everybody. And And we are back with another guest today. We are back still at the New Leaf Liberal pre-AGM pub night with a candidate for the executive, not for the core executive, but for the Ontario Women's Liberal Commission. We have Jennifer Alexander. She is running to be the regional vice president for the commission in Etobicoke, downtown in East York. So if you're one of those three ridings, the same as the three ridings that our friend Noah Parker's in, then she'll be one of your candidates you can vote for. Jennifer, how are you doing tonight?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me on. This is exciting.
No, well, thank you for agreeing to come and do a few minutes here because, it is nice to talk with a variety of Liberals tonight here who are going to be at the AGM and, just get their perspective and things. And, you have a unique perspective because you're running for the Women's Commission, and I'm familiar with the commissions, but to explain to folks at home, in addition to the central executive for the party, they have 4 commissions to serve underserved groups or groups that need more representation. So I've got the Young Liberals, the Senior Liberals, the Rural and Northern Commission, and the Women's Commission. And you're running for one of the regional positions on the Women's Commission.
Exactly. So the Women's Commission really is there to try and get more women involved in politics, get them involved in the Liberals. There is the Margaret Campbell's fund, which actually helps to women candidates, just because sometimes there's issues with women in politics and trying to get the fundraising, so
Right.
It helps to give us a upper hand.
For one, I know with fundraising, it's I've had to do it myself. It requires a very aggressive, pushy mindset, which women aren't socialized into as much in our society. I don't think that's a bad thing, mind you. I think men might be a bit too pushy. But it is something that, you're right, I do appreciate that the Margaret Campbell Fund exists to help women candidates. And I know there's a fund for youth candidates as well.
Exactly. And then that's the thing. I was always told basically be quiet, be polite. That's how you get on in the world. But I learned through my advocacy work that if I just sit there, smile, and shut up, nothing ever gets done.
Right. I know my mom went back to law school when I was in kindergarten, so I've never really been in tune with that kind of perspective where women are just supposed to be there but not heard. No, that's stupid. Contrary to the belief of the Joe Rogans and Andrew Tates of the world, women are in fact people the last time I checked.
Well, yeah, and we're 50% of the population. So
Right.
I think we have a view. Maybe we don't always see things the same way, but I think sometimes where we're able to kind of have this caregiving, nurturing that we're supposed to have, which isn't always going to be, as a mother. It's not always going to be family. It's nurturing, your community. It's nurturing your province if you're running.
And yeah, it's women do bring a different perspective to things. You can talk about how much of that is nature or nurture, but also it's it's important for half of the population to be there. And it says a lot that these commissions are, again, supposed to represent underrepresented groups. But women, again, are half the population. So why are they underrepresented?
Well, that's the thing. When you look at it, I have heard so many times now in the last year or two where politics isn't for women anymore. We get more badgering, we get more threats online, we get threats in person.
And the idea of it getting worse for women is crazy. We've generally lived in a world where feminism has gotten better. It's a scary time right now. And do you see in the current context of the erasure of women's rights that is very important to have this kind of role to steward younger women in the party?
Exactly, and that's why I'm getting involved, because I know it took me a long, long time to get to a point where I even felt comfortable joining a party. And there's so many women across Toronto who, we want to get into it, or we don't know where we fit. We don't want to be a candidate. Maybe we want to work in the background. I discovered in the last election, I love the idea of being a campaign manager one day. So I really am hoping that we can build up the women's clubs in the city of Toronto. We're the biggest city, but we have very, very few clubs. So
Right.
there's something missing.
No, yeah, and I know part of the impetus for like why there's so many more like young liberal clubs than other commission clubs is because they got like dedicated delegates for the campus clubs for like they got points for the leadership, they got delegates for AGMs, and I know like I believe a minimum number of delegates have to be women for AGM, but it doesn't have to be like 50%.
I think it's 3.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I think it's 3.
It's 3 out of 15 have to be women, or I believe now also like non-binary or transgender. Like, not that I'm upset there's a minimum, but shouldn't it be a little higher?
I'm going to go back to that 50%. If you're going to put a number on women, then maybe you need to bring it up closer to that 50%.
Right. It's like it, and like even as a guy, like I find this frustrating. Like it's like these shouldn't be like things you have to beg for in the year 2025.
Well, that's it. Like I have these conversations with my husband all the time. I'm looking at healthcare, and there are things where women's healthcare is treated differently, and you know, he's looking at me going, what are you talking about? And I'll tell him stories, and he can't believe it.
Oh yeah, I know. I've heard stories from women like they go into the ER, they're in horrible pain, like they're writhing on the floor in agony.
Yeah.
Like security tells them you're drug seeking, you just want painkillers. If you don't leave, we're gonna call the police. They had endometriosis.
Exactly.
Like it's infuriating.
Yeah.
Like and what frustrates me the most, I think, about the state of like women in the Liberal Party is like I can understand the men who are misogynists. Like I hate it, but like I get why men are misogynists.
Yeah.
It's out of self-benefit. The women who help the misogynists, that really terrifies me.
It's so disappointing. I mean, I have had so many men saying, "Well, don't women uplift women?" And I go, not really. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find amazing women, and I've met some really, really wonderful women in the Liberal Party, and I think we need to uplift them because they are the ones that really need to show those who are interested in the party, who maybe don't know that they're interested, but if they start talking to us and just are doing community leaders, you
don't want the crab in a bucket mentality.
Exactly.
You don't want like women to think their success has to come at the expense of other women.
100%. Yes.
And you see like the role of the Women's Commission as helping foster that culture. Like, and do you think it's doing a good enough job of that now?
I think their heart is in the right place. I think they are starting to do things. I think seeing so many women candidates, you know, that's who they're supporting. And we've been in an election that kind of just happened. So I think they've been doing everything that they can with what they needed to do at the time. But now that we're at this period where we know there's not going to be an election for a while, I'm really, really hoping to, you know, have an influence if you know, delegates see right, but that maybe we start looking at not just bringing in candidates, but bringing in women who just want to have a say in policy, in campaigns back behind closed doors, and just find a spot for everybody. Use your talents, use your passions. The Liberal Party is open to you. And that's what I think the Women's Commission has started, and I think that's where we need to continue going.
And I know there seems to be a bit more like contested races for the Women's Commission this time than last time. Do you think that's a good thing?
I think it is. I think you're starting to see people who weren't thinking that was something they could do before. I'm in a contested race, and I know that the person who's going against me is also very new, and we're going to bring in different mindsets. We're going to bring in different ideas. So I think it's great. I think it's better than being claimed.
And it's good, isn't it, for women to have a space where they can like debate women's issues with each other, like with all due respect to me, but without someone like me butting their head in and being like, here's how me and my penis feel about things.
Exactly. I think it is going to be so exciting to be able to be in an AGM tomorrow night with just women who think like me, who want to do better, and maybe we don't all have the same ideas and agree on how to do it, but we can sit there and discuss. And we're not going to have anybody telling us, no, dear, that's not how you think.
Right. One of my favorite positions on the Women's Commission is the liaison kind of, the young liberal woman. Like, just because I think it's a great bridge, like, to the next generation. Like, do you see, like, hopefully that you could be in, like, a mentorship role to other young liberal women, like, who are coming up in the party, like, trying to build their career, maybe even be a candidate someday, hopefully be a premier someday?
Absolutely. I think that is something that we need to have. I think it's definitely, I know a lot of young women who are, maybe 2 or 3 in a young liberal club. And I think that they need to be able to see women who have been doing it for a while and have that mentorship and make it policy so that it can't go anywhere.
Right. Like, you want it to be robust. You want to have, like, institutions that people can trust long term, like, to actually build up these things and not just worry that, like, in 2 years a new executive will wipe everything from scratch.
Absolutely. I have been volunteering for a decade, and when you volunteer, you get tired. When you volunteer, you get pulled in so many directions, you end up taking on new projects. This would need to be something that is not there just because of one person. It needs to be in place to survive however many governments we have, however many leaders we have, or executive councils.
Now, one thing that, other than your executive race and the other contested races, the big topic going into the AGM is obviously the leadership review and whether or not Bonnie Crombie will remain as leader of the party. Now, obviously, like, this is a separate race from yours for the executive, but, like, how are you aligning yourself as a candidate in relation to that leadership review vote?
So I'm looking at myself as a grassroots. I'm not going to lie. I'm very connected with New Leaf Libs.
Well, you are at the event here tonight.
I'm at the event, and I'm going to be honest. I'm the person checking in people, so obviously I'm a little bit involved. But I don't want that to be kind of that's the New Leaf candidate. That's all she's thinking is. Right. Because I've been doing so much independent work for so long. I'm an independent candidate who just happens to very much align and work.
You've been around for a long time, like, but it's like you're aligned with the New Leaf Libs, like you're here, like you're. So, is it fair to presume you're voting yes in the contest?
I will tell you that I would vote yes if I could. I do believe we need to absolutely have a fresh look at the party. Unfortunately, I'm an alternate.
Oh, so you didn't become a delegate for this one?
No, I did not become a delegate in time. So that's my fault.
No worries. Well, I mean, people can still vote for you at least, but does that mean you can't vote for you?
I cannot vote for myself.
That is tragic. I'm very sorry.
My daughter, who's a young Lib, who will be there with me, she is also a alternate, so she cannot vote for me.
Well, hopefully on Saturday afternoon you'll be on the lucky end of promotions. But Jennifer, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me. Best of luck in your contest. Hopefully you'll have some good news.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you. Jennifer Alexander, everybody, running for the Ontario Women's Liberal Commission tomorrow at the Ontario Liberal AGM for Regional Vice President in Etobicoke, downtown, and East York. Today's episode of It's Getting Pretty Late with Jake Landau is brought to you by me. Folks, all of my work is available for free with no paywall at jakelandau.ca. But in order to keep writing and recording, I need money, because money is what makes this show go round. So, if you enjoy my content or find it informative, please consider a paid subscription at jakelandau.ca/subscribe. And please leave a 5-star rating on the show in your favorite podcast app, be it Apple, Spotify, or a secret third thing. Thank you, and enjoy the show. And we are back with our two headline topics of the week, one national and one local, because I'm never letting the local news off the hook. I do like getting some local news on the program every week. But our national story of the day from CBC News from Ashley Burke in the politics section. Carney's government introducing bill to protect people entering religious and cultural buildings. Source says legislation could be tabled as early as Tuesday. Now, there's been a long-standing promise under both Carney and the Trudeau government that federal criminal legislation would be tabled to restrict people from willfully intimidating or obstructing people from entering places of worship, cultural community centers, and schools. This will apparently propose 3 new offenses under Canada's criminal code, including creating a new hate crime offense. Carney promised this during his election campaign, and it's about like safety and security and all of that stuff. And it comes after things like the controversial bubble zone bylaw that was passed in Toronto, and which I talked about with one of my guests on this program. And one thing we've talked about, and my main concern with this, is that it is quite frankly very hard to see how this could stand up to a charter challenge. Like, it seems to violate very basic freedoms of protest. And let's talk about the main inciting thing. People have been protesting outside of synagogues. And as a Jewish person, obviously, I don't want someone to protest outside of a synagogue because it's a synagogue or because Jewish people are there, because that would obviously be anti-Semitic and bad. Like, it would be bad for me personally. It would also be bad for society. But that isn't really what's happening here. Me and my family, whenever we hear one of these stories in the GTA or in Canada, we look, and then we find out there was something like a real estate auction for West Bank settlements, or they were having former IDF soldiers doing a speaking engagement. And I think for very obvious reasons, these highly politically charged things where potential war criminals or illegal settlements in occupied territory are auctioned off. Like, that is a very different case from being a normal religious facility or location or place of worship doing normal religious activities. Like, I do not believe that real estate auctions are a part of the Jewish religion, according to what I was taught going to Jewish day school from kindergarten to grade 8. So no, I think there's a bit of a false pretense here, and it isn't just about that though, because one of the examples I brought up with Toronto is that there are so many different religious sites and schools spread out in cities that something like this could ban protest in like a large majority of the city, even if you're protesting somewhere out that isn't actually that place of worship or school itself. But like, I think it's obvious there are a lot of reasons why someone may want to protest a place of worship, may want to discourage people from going in there, and be perfectly legitimate. For one, we are all aware of the history of child sexual abuse in Catholic schools, if that in Catholic churches, but also there's been a lot of covering up by the priesthood. And there's a pretty valid concern if, like, say your local priest did that to someone in your church or an equivalent in another religious institution, would it not be valid to say, get a sign and protest outside and tell people, hey, don't go in there, that's a bad place? An even more blatant example, like, religion itself is relative. What we consider a religion may not be what someone else considers a religion. Like, Scientology to me is a dangerous cult which has a concentration camp in Florida, but they qualify as a religion technically under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and as a result they could apply this law to someone protesting outside a Church of Scientology in Toronto. And I think it's very obvious with everything Leah Remini has told us about the horrible time as a member and victim of that church and cult, that, you know, people should have the freedom to protest outside these kinds of places. And like, there are similar kinds of policies like a school can take that might be, obviously you don't want to protest for a stupid reason. You want to protest for a good reason. But also, that's not how the law or a constitutional right works. It has to be, on even ground. But also, there are some causes that are better than other causes. And I think just generally, we need to lean on the side of not restricting Canadians from protesting very legitimate things. And this is a legitimate cause to protest. If someone is holding a speaking engagement from an Israeli soldier and they just came back from Gaza, I may have some questions about what they did there. We're seeing mass starvation. We're seeing what is now widely considered to be a genocide. And if we're being honest, has been a genocide for quite some time now. So is it not fair to protest that kind of individual doing a speaking engagement? It isn't about it being in a synagogue. It's about who came to the synagogue. So I'm not a fan of this kind of lawfare to try and legally restrict people who the government or people in positions of authority decide are doing protest in an uncomfortable way. Because protest isn't supposed to be comfortable. And if someone commits a hate crime, there are already hate crime laws. Like, there are already laws against being, virulently anti-Semitic in public. This is not about that. This is about a very political thing about people who are harboring or facilitating a war criminal during a speaking engagement or during these real estate auctions. They are selling land in occupied territory, which the United Nations and the international court system in The Hague have told us is very bad and you cannot economically participate in, and that countries like Canada actually have a responsibility to sanction and cut off ties with this system of settlements and apartheid in the West Bank and now also expanding in Syria. So yeah, I'm not a fan of this individual policy, but we will see where that goes. We will, maybe on Tuesday, we will see this legislation put forward and we will have some more specific details. But again, that is the story from Ashley Burke at CBC News. Our second headline topic of the week is the local story, and this is a sad one, folks. This is from CTV News by Cody Wilson and Laura Sebin in York Region. York Regional Police say a driver who crashed into a Richmond Hill daycare has been charged with dangerous driving causing death after a toddler was killed and several other children were injured on Wednesday afternoon. This is a really horrible situation. The crash occurred at First Roots Early Education Academy right on Yonge Street in York Region around 3 p.m. yesterday. Not yesterday, but you get the idea. Officers arrived to find 10 people, including 7 children and 3 staff, injured after an SUV came crashing through the front of the daycare. The victims were transported to the hospital. A 1.5-year-old boy was subsequently pronounced dead, which is horrible. 2 children remain in critical condition. The remaining 4 sustained non-life-threatening injuries. The 3 staff who were injured, I don't have any information on the status of their injuries or the criticality or whether they're life-threatening or not. But the children injured in this collision range from the 1.5-year-old who died to the 3-year-old. The driver, a 7-year-old man from Richmond Hill, has now been charged with dangerous driving causing death and dangerous operation causing bodily harm. Investigators are still gathering evidence. There may be other charges that get laid on top of these things. And according to Constable Kevin Nabrija of the York Regional Police, initial information suggests the vehicle was in the parking lot at the time and for reasons unknown drove through the front of the window and then drove through more than one building in the room. However, he also says that information right now has led us to determine that this was not a deliberate act. I don't know it's much consolation to the parents of that young boy that he was murdered not deliberately, just accidentally. Like, it's a child is dead, like a very young child, like, and their parents, they send their kids to daycare thinking they're going to be safe. Like, of all the things they think could happen there, they don't think an SUV is just going to barrel through the window at random. This is part of the repeated thing I have gone on about how we do not take dangerous driving serious in this country because we allow large, massive vehicles that hit with more force because they have more mass. We allow people to drive who are clearly incompetent at driving because if this wasn't an intentional act, then he never should have had a license in the first place. And the problem is that you have to be very old in Ontario before you have to start retesting. And in my opinion, I think people should just have to retest for their G license, their full license, every 5 years. I think you should have to prove you are safe enough to operate a motor vehicle every 5 years, because in my experience from driving in the car with a lot of people seem to drive at their safest when they're a teenager before they get their full G, and then after they've passed that final test, they just stop caring, and they get worse and worse and worse over the decades, especially as that G transitions into whatever future equivalent licenses as the curriculum updates and improves for driver safety and training and instruction. So there are so many things that are emblematic here, but what really gets me is there's this one comment I've made before that if you want to kill somebody in this country, you do it with your car and you'll barely go to jail for any time at all. And I am very, very anxious and curious to see exactly how much time this individual is going to go to jail for. Because I'm sorry, you cannot, this is murder. Like, they call it dangerous driving calling death. Like, you are parked in the parking lot, and then you just randomly accelerate through a window and smash through 7 children? That's absurd. Like, the idea that there might not just be the same penalty for someone who kills people in a car as someone who kills people outside of a car, it is absurd to me. It is indicative of a world where we value SUVs over the lives of 18-month-old toddlers. And I don't know what to say. Like, there is nothing that can be said to the parents here that will ever make this okay. The province is now considering new legislation that will propose changes to remove parking spots directly in front of windows outside daycares. I think that's fine. I support that, especially on Yonge Street. I just don't think you need that much parking, especially like with an expanding subway soon and a reliable enough York Region public transit system. I think it's a good experience to get your kids comfortable taking public transit. And I think the more people who are off the road and on public transit instead, the less of these tragic incidents will occur. Because the less people who are driving, the more trained operatives we have, like skilled bus drivers or truck drivers who have a lot more instruction than your regular G driver. I feel safer around those drivers on the road than I do around people in their normal car. And I know I'm not alone in this sentiment. But whatever new laws the province passes, whatever reforms might come, it's not going to bring this kid back. It's not going to take away the trauma that these other children are going to have, or this trauma that the staff are going to have. Like, I can't imagine, like, what it must feel like working at that daycare, having these kids in your protection, like, feeling a responsibility for their safety, and then they get hurt, but it's not your fault at all. Because how could a daycare worker expect someone to randomly just barrel through a window with their SUV while parked in the parking lot. That's absurd. So there are going to be people who are working there who may feel a sense of guilt, and that makes me feel really bad because they shouldn't feel guilty. And I hope that though both the children and the adults who work there, that they get resources for psychological and psychiatric therapy. I think they should get wraparound care. I don't have much hope for the access to healthcare in our province, unfortunately, with the state of Doug Ford's funding of things. But I think the parents, the children, the staff, all of them need the support of healthcare professionals, both mental and physical. They need the support of their community, their neighbors, their loved ones. So if you live in Richmond Hill, if you want to go drop off some flowers by the window of the daycare, if you want to go show your support and love and consideration for these people, I'm sure that would be greatly appreciated. That'll be doing it for this week's episode. Thank you to all of you folks for listening through the lighter elements of this episode and the unfortunately sadder stories today. Next week, we'll be back in the studio full-time with a normal episode. We will have a special guest. They work in sports media, but that's the only hint I'm giving you. And don't guess, because I won't tell you who they are before they come on. Thank you again for listening, folks, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. This is the end of the show. Bye.